Thank you for coming. If it weren't for you, we'd have no audience. Except for our beloved, well, you guys are like, you have to be here.
Yeah, nice 30-second opening, Kathy. She took 2 minutes.
Jamie took all my good answers.
Read for a
I
minute.
thought it was 2 minutes. I didn't know it was 30
That's fair,
seconds.
because they did
I think
say,
Gavin's ready for us.
Yeah.
not for the intro. The intro is 30 seconds.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is 6:30 on the 21st of October, 2024. Welcome to the regular meeting of the Monticello School Board. Please join us and stand if you're able for the Pledge of Allegiance. Ladies and gentlemen, before we get into our agenda for this evening, Superintendent Olson would like to make some remarks about a very sad event that has affected our school community.
Computer just shut down, so give me a second. That'd be great. I want to make sure that I read it correctly. Actually, sorry, everything's spinning. Is there something with internet connectivity here? I got both my computers not.
Do you want to use mine? Apologize to the audience for having some technical difficulties with internet connection. Do you want mine?
All right. Well, I do not have exactly the words that I want to say, but I will speak from my heart here tonight. Amber Sinot, an 11th grade student, passed away over the weekend, and Monticello High School administration and myself got to work with the family over the weekend in preparation for me to be able to say something here today. We're all so proud of Amber as we watched her grow, especially in this last year. She was so proud of herself for the academic gains and the friends that she had. Teachers were recognizing her for all the achievements that she was accomplishing, especially in the areas of improving. Teachers were noticing her with postcards and strong statements of her being committed to both work inside the school and commitment to her family outside. And so it is with great pause here today for us to come together and recognize our 11th grade student, Amber Sinot, who has tragically passed from a medical emergency over the weekend. We have counselors available for our students, but please take a moment of silence here with us tonight to honor the life of a beautiful young lady.
Thank you, Mr. Olson. Sadly, we've had too many of these this year, and it really weighs heavy on our hearts to lose members of our school community. So we extend our deep compassion to the family as they deal with these really difficult times, and for the students and teachers that are working with her friends. So as we move on with our agenda this evening, we need to approve the tentative agenda as our agenda for the evening. Do I have a motion to approve the tentative agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Melissa Curtis, seconded by Casey Root. All those in favor of approving the agenda, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, please say no. And the motion passes 6-0. We do have no citizens' comments this evening. Moving on to item number 5, fiscal stability. We have consent agenda items that consist of approval of our minutes from October the 7th, personnel matters, and our bill summary, bills, P-card, Amazon card, and wires. Board members received these documents well in advance of the meeting, had the opportunity to ask questions, which I know there were some this week that were successfully answered. And so is there any further discussion of the consent agenda items by the board? Hearing no discussion, I'll entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Melissa Curtis, seconded by Casey Root. All those in favor of approving the consent agenda, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, please say no. And the motion passes 6-0. Moving on to collaborative connections, the school board has set a tentative meeting schedule for the remainder of 2024 and 2025 for our meeting dates. Gavin, could you pull those up so that the members in the room and online can see those dates? Generally, we meet the first and third Mondays of the month. The first Monday of the month, we meet at 5 p.m. The second Monday of the month, third Monday of the month, we meet at 6 p.m. There's a few exceptions to those. One of those is the December 2nd school board meeting, which is the first meeting of the month. Will start at 6 p.m. on that night, and that's because of the truth in taxation hearing that we'll be having. So those are the dates for 2024, and then can we see the dates for 2025? And you'll have to scroll down, or scroll up, I guess. To see the ones from January. Oh, January, February, March, there we go. And we have them all the way through September of this year. Is there any discussion on the board for the tentative meeting dates for 2024, 2025? Okay, I'll entertain a motion to approve these.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Melissa Curtis, seconded by Casey Root. All those in favor of approving the dates for the regular meeting and special meeting of the school board for 2024 and 2025, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, please say no. And the motion passes 6-0. We are now moving to our resolution for the acceptance of gifts. Every meeting, I'm astonished at how generous our community is, and this meeting is no exception. We have $25,000 worth of donations to our district, and I'm going to have Superintendent Olson discuss those.
All right. First up, we have $5,000 from an anonymous donor for students in need at the Monticello Middle School. We have $10,000 from Parkview Care Center to provide funding for the Monticello High School CNA instructor, where those students will then be part of our youth internship program, interning with Cassia, Parkview, and Lake Ridge. Our Monticello Lions Club has come forth with $5,000 for the purchase of research and leisure reading books at the Monticello High School. And the VFW has also brought forth $500 for the purchase of research and leisure reading books at the Monticello High School. Those last two, just so you make sure that I can kind of clarify those ones. There is a group of mostly retired teachers who are out there kind of as a, I would call it a piece of our rally to read. And they are, asking organizations if they can, help bolster the library. And they wanted to start with one thing specific. These aren't just to purchase books. These are to allow our district media specialists to be able to go through the process of selecting the books that are appropriate for our school district, following the guidelines that we have set forth. So it's to add books, but it's to follow a process.
And Superintendent Olson, I think there was a very large article in the Monticello Times last week about that program for anybody that's interested in reading more. So we have a resolution.
Therefore be it resolved by the Monticello School Board number 882 to gratefully accept the following donations. Anonymous, $5,000 for students in need at MMS. Parkview Care Center, $10,000 to provide funding for the CNA instructor. Monticello Lions Club, $5,000 for the purchase of research and leisure reading books at MHS. And the VFW, $500 for the purchase of research and leisure reading books at MHS.
Second.
A resolution read by Jeff Hegle, seconded by Melissa Curtis. All those in favor of accepting the donations as presented, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, please say no. And the resolution for donations passes 6-0. Moving on to teaching and learning, we have with us this evening Cindy Fashing, Director of Teaching and Learning, and Superintendent Olson, which are going to, the two of them are going to give us a very in-depth presentation on district goals and results. I'm Cindy, and thank you for coming in.
Thank you. Good evening, Chair Ziebarth, board members, Superintendent Olson, and audience members. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it. This evening, I'm going to be going through our annual report on the progress that we've made towards our 2023-2024 district goals. I'm going to be talking with you about 4 different sets of goals that we have. I'll briefly talk with you about the 2023-2026 district-wide observable impact goals. That's our 3-year plan. And then I will talk with you about the results, the summary results of our World's Best Workforce and Achievement and Integration goals. Those are tied together, so when I go through those, you're going to see how I tie those together. And then lastly, I will go through our new goals, our achievement goals for this coming school year. First off, you'll see this is a live link. I'm not going to have Gavin open this. You can do this on your own. Superintendent Olson and I will come back on November 11th and really go into detail about our district-wide observable impact goals. But I wanted you to know that this is our 3-year overarching plan for student achievement and growth in many areas across the district. That plan addresses achievement in literacy, attendance improvement, graduation rate improvements, and then implementing our vision of a learner. So we'll be going through that with you in more detail on November 4th. So we'll wait in high anticipation for that. But I do want to highlight some of the key areas, and I know this is kind of small, but I'll run through some of the most important areas. These are some of the things that we pulled from our district-wide observable impact plan to really talk about what have we been working on the last year and a half, so a year and 6 weeks or so, I should say. So all of 23, 24, and then so far this year. Remember that change takes about 3 to 5 years, and we're in year 1.1 of our change. So what we have done, though, is we've provided structures for consistent professional development across the district, building on collective efficacy, which is a strong component that we go through every admin meeting. So science of reading has been embedded across all of our buildings, really. So we have 151 teachers right now who are engaged in either letters training for K through 5 or letters training for early childhood. We have administrators involved, or we have teachers involved in what's called OLA training. And so we're really working hard on reading mastery and reading instruction. Also, we have designed, redesigned, or built highly effective reading intervention programs, and we're working hard on that throughout the school year and all of last year. We've done that by partnering with the University of Minnesota CARI. So CARI stands for the Center for Applied Research and Educational Improvement. And so we've been partnering with them for several years now, really helping us build reading instruction and highly effective practices. We've also been partnering with Compass cohorts through the Minnesota Department of Education for the last 3 years, really learning a lot about high-quality instruction in reading. So remember, we're really only in year 1.1 of our teachers getting reading instruction, and so they're about halfway through that. So we've got a long way to go yet in order to improve our reading instruction, but we're well on our way, I think. We're using data to drive planning and decision-making according to our MTSS model being led by our new MTSS coordinator, Stephanie Nordstag, and really embedding those systems of Tier 1, 2, and 3 core instruction, intervention programming throughout our buildings, working with our data study teams, really making it part of what we do every day is looking at data. We've designed systems of support for teachers as they implement the new reading curriculum, giving them time and space in order to collaborate on those things. They work in their PLCs, teams, and cohorts. They work with instructional coaches, reading coaches, and their principals have been highly trained. So they're well on their way with Kristen Hall helping lead that effort as well. She's our district literacy lead. That's okay. Yeah. We're also working this year, starting to design systems of fidelity checking on our curriculum to make sure that we are really teaching the curriculum as it's designed, and it's all students have equal access to high-quality curriculum and instruction across both buildings, no matter what grade level. Our schedules have changed where we've reallocated instructional minutes for reading. So we went from maybe 60 minutes to 90 minutes up to 120 minutes in many grade levels. So we're hoping that we'll see that gain through student growth over the next year. We're also this year going to be focusing on redesigning lessons across content areas and all grade levels, where they will implement more reading, writing, listening, and speaking across all grades. And then finally, all of our buildings have built their own family engagement model, where they will improve their efforts in engaging families and becoming partners with our families, and also implementing an attendance intervention plan across all buildings to improve that attendance rate.
And then I'd like to jump in and just, when you look at these bullets are definitely what we would call the science of the profession. And the thing that's awesome about our district is amazing at the relationships. And so when you hear teacher preparation programs talk about the art of teaching, what they're really talking about is the relationship building, whether it be coaching or in the classroom. And what we're trying to build here are the scientific pieces that I would say that our district had in spotty places, but not as a unified system of support. And so that's what we've been working on. Obviously, we are in year 2 of the implementation, but some of the things that we just built, including attendance and engagement, the last ones that you just mentioned, those didn't get built until the summer. So we're just getting started on the overall plans. So I'd just like to make a mention that these bullets are really, really important, and think of them as the science of our district.
Thank you. Moving forward, you're going to see the summary results of last year's World's Best Workforce and Achievement and Integration Goals. And again, you're going to see that I'm tying them together because they are purposely related to each other. And I'm going to go back. Those are both live links as well. If you want to, on your own time, be able to look at those and dig deeper into those, you sure can. Our first World's Best Workforce goal area is all children are ready for school. So in that area, we set 2 different goals, one for pre-K and one for K. So our percentage of 4-year-olds who attain sufficient progress, we were looking for more than 90% of our students being ready for kindergarten at the end of pre-K. And we met that goal at 93.7%. So we feel really good about that. And that was at the end of last year. Also at the end of last year, our goal was for our kindergarten students to gain 3% from 47% to 50% on their FastBridge early reading assessment. They met that goal by gaining 7% instead of 3%. So our kindergartners gained as well coming into first grade. So that was very exciting to see as well. The second area for World's Best Workforce is that all 3rd graders can read at grade level. Keep in mind that this will be the last year that you'll see that World's Best Workforce goal. Moving forward, the changes in the READ Act say that all students will read at grade level every year. So a 1st grader will read at 1st grade, a 2nd grade at 2nd grade at least. So this is the last year you'll see specifically 3rd grade. Our 2 goals were related to FastBridge A reading screening and then MCA testing. The difference between those, just to remind you, FastBridge measures risk at not reading at grade level, and it's really aligned to the Common Core state standards for reading at grade level. whereas the MCA is measuring Minnesota State Standards mastery. So one is risk level and one is mastery. One is measuring Common Core and one is measuring Minnesota State Standards, which are a little bit different than Common Core. You'll notice in both areas, our goal was not met. We wanted to move FastBridge from 66% to 70%. You see it went, instead of up 4%, we went down 10%. If you look at the colors, the really light purple are the highest achieving, and then the lavender is at low risk. So it's at no risk is light purple, low risk is the darker purple, some risk is the light pink, and then high risk is the darker pink. You're looking at.
I have a question.
Yes.
So this one here that missed it by 10%, which is really 16% of your total that you were trying to get to. What was the two biggest drivers in that, and what is the district doing to correct those two drivers?
Good question, and that is on my very next slide. So I'll address it as soon as I get there, Casey, and then we'll talk more. And then same with MCAs, we went down about 5.7, I gotta do my 5.6% or so, instead of going up. If you look at the achievement and integration goal, this is our first achievement and integration goal, but it does align directly to the World's Best Workforce goal. But remember, the goals of achievement and integration are to reduce the inequities that we see in student populations that could be at risk or underserved populations, marginalized populations. So the NI goal was students who qualify for free and reduced rate lunches or students of color would increase up to 70%. And remember, A&I plan is a 3-year plan. It's 2023 to 2026. So we're looking at progress towards that 2026 goal of 70%. So our free and reduced did go up a nice amount of 11.5%. So that was a nice gain to see. Students of color went down a little bit, probably not significant, a 0.5% decrease. That's right, yeah. So we're on track in some areas and have a little bit of work to do in the other areas. But let's address that question about grade 3. So there's a lot of research out there about students who last year were third graders and all of the things and the root causes that we see in all of the data, and you see this across the state of Minnesota as well. This last year's third graders, so the data that is reflective here, those kids were in kindergarten the first year of COVID. Those kids were learning with a mask on, and if you know a lot about reading instruction, they're watching the teacher's mouth. They are listening for articulation sounds. Teachers have pictures of what your mouth should look like when you're making those sounds. Kids use mirrors to be able to do that. None of that could really work when kids were wearing masks. So there was some struggle there. We see an increase in students who need speech. Again, it's an effect of some of that. They're catching up, but that is one of the things. Also, some of those earliest learners were virtual learners. Again, really hard to learn to read when you're a kindergartner, learning how to do school and trying to read virtually. We also had a lot fewer students in 2021 and 2022 who enrolled in pre-K and K programs. Parents were working from home, they were keeping their kids home for safety reasons, so we had a lot fewer kids engaged in education as a young child. But what I do want you to look at are the great gains that cohort of kids has made. So when they were kindergartners, only 36% of our kindergartners were at benchmark, or making progress, or reading at grade level. By the very next year, they gained 12% as first graders, then another 10% as second graders, held pretty steady as third graders, but already in the fall of this year, those same kids are at 63% proficient. So they've made a lot of progress, and we've talked about that, right? Learning loss takes about 3 years for it to catch up, and we're seeing that. And you see a lot of that same trend when you look across most of our grade levels. So they're not maybe making the goals that I wanted them to make or the goals that we set for them, but they are making great strides. So I think that's really a great improvement on our part. Some of the other things that we're doing to intervene is we're giving kids not only a first scoop of learning to read, but a high quality second scoop during their win time. And some of them are even getting a third scoop with our one-on-one with our reading professionals. So we're working hard at it, and with the new curriculum and the new reading coaches that we have in place and everything, I'm hoping by the end of the year and see great results. I trust we will. Questions about that?
I just think that's such a great question, and it should be a part of the landscape of our school board. And so moving forward, Cindy and I are going to be bringing cohort data more often so that you can see how, so you're really comparing apples to apples. Oftentimes we set goals and then we compare basically last year's group of students to this year's group of students when you're looking at third grade to third grade. But it's taking a group of students and looking, is what we're doing working? And so we'll start bringing that more often, and we can talk about that during my goals presentation too, coming up, or when we present on November 4th. How often would you like to see data? We can start at, every other month and bring forth some, every time we do some fast bridge testing, we can bring forth some, break it down into cohorts just like this, because I really think this paints a good picture of what we're doing with the apples to apples, or with our the like students.
Yeah, and when you show this to teachers who felt like they were a failure, they wanted to make a greater stride, this really helps them realize that they are impactful.
I appreciate the cohort. I guess another one of my questions is, how do we as a district match up to others throughout the state and United States with this specific grade level?
A really good question. Mr. Olson, can you write that down? Let's bring that back. Really good question. I know we're above the state average at almost every grade level, so we're probably above the state average, but I'd like to look at it overall. Good question. Yes, sorry.
Your graph here, two information you have on the slides. So if we were, which one of those, is the top paragraph or the bottom paragraph that we're looking at when compared to
The top.
Do you want me to repeat the question?
Yes.
Okay. Sorry, I didn't have my mic on.
Okay.
World's Best Workforce, goal number 2, has 2 paragraphs and talks about where we ended up as compared to this graph that you show.
Right.
Is one of those paragraphs reflective of what we're looking at on the graph, or is that different data?
So this is the 56% at the end. If you look at the very first one, which is FastBridge data, 56%. So third graders were at 56% last year. And then you see that's underneath spring 2023, 2024. That's the third graders were at 56%. So that's where those match up.
And we're saying that now, 6 months or so later, they're at 63%. And
In the fall compared to spring of last year.
right,
Yeah. Yep. So they came in without typical summer learning loss even.
Right.
So something really stuck with them. We had maybe a very strong summer school program this year. We really were intentional about all of our reading professionals were teaching summer school this past year. And we had a high number of students who were at risk. So maybe that's part of why they came in fourth grade. That would be another good thing to look at.
and I guess if we go back to that slide that shows, yeah, so over on the right, you show the benchmark, and it looks like the area that increased the most is the partial risk,
Yep, some risk.
called it?
Yep,
Some risk.
students at some risk.
That has to be the group that must have pinched to push some of them over the
Yes.
benchmark to get us to the 63%, right?
Yes, yes. So some of those kids fell from the darker purple into which was low risk, into the some risk. And that's why that pink grew in the darker purple down.
Cindy, is the 66% here, the bar graph on the left, was that though the previous year's students that we're comparing? So they're two completely different
Yes.
groups of students?
Yes, that was the previous year's
That's why the
third
cohort
graders. And
information's important.
yes,
Okay.
so the 56% is this year's third graders, and the one before that is the previous year third graders. Yep. Who were at 66%. Yep. Again, different cohort of kids, different group of kids who've had a different learning experience. They went 1, 2, 3.
Have you seen that before, where we've seen such a large jump from spring to fall when we're talking about just a few weeks of school?
No, I have not seen very much of that, spring to fall. However, our spring data, to be honest, tends to be lower than our winter data, because I think kids coming off of the MCAs have some testing fatigue, a little bit of that. So sometimes we'll see fall data, and then winter goes up a little bit, and then spring comes down, which then is why fall might go back up again, because kids aren't tired of testing. It's their first test of the year. So sometimes you see that fluctuation in screening data because of that.
I appreciate the cohort data, and I'm thinking as we move ahead with that, that could be really useful information as kids transition from elementary school to middle school to high school. If we can trend those longitudinally with the cohorts, we might be able to identify earlier when kids move up to a different level of education and intervene even earlier.
I do have that data that I can share with you, and I can bring it back on the 4th. So I did that with MCAs, and I did that with FastBridge over a 10-year span. So I do have that. I just didn't put it in here, but I can bring that to you.
Thank you, yeah. Great
It
minds
does
think
tell a
alike.
good story. You'll see, yeah. All right, moving on. The third area is to close all racial and economic achievement gaps. This is required by World's Best Workforce. So our goal area was students who qualify for free and reduced lunch and students of color would increase by 2% each year on our MCAs. And so you'll see that students on free and reduced lunch did increase that they increased 1%. So not quite, they're on their way, but they didn't quite make that goal. And we had a little bit of a dip, about a 0.6 dip with students of color. Not significant, and the achievement integration goal was exactly the same as the workforce goal in this case. Moving away from MCA data, I just wanted to share this again. I bring this back every year. Participation rates for our district compared to other districts in the state. We tend to be amongst the lowest of participation rates. The state averages are higher than we are. We did really well in science this year, actually, compared to maybe previous years. I think we were at 80% last year, so we did really well this year with science. 90% is good, but we'd sure rather have 95% participation rates. We really want people to understand that we're not using MCAs to judge students. We're using MCAs to evaluate our own progress towards meeting state standards and our own progress towards goals, and it gives us information on what we need to improve on. And if we don't have this piece of data and it's not as accurate as we can get, it does hurt us in the long run. So we need it to be as accurate as we can get it. So any help we can get with participation would be wonderful. We problem solve every year on this.
Am I correct, Cindy? One of the things that we've had discussion at the delegate assembly about is when they report districts who have a cohort of students that don't participate, they actually count them as failures rather than to eliminate them from the total number that's being scored. And so I know there are some proposals that are out there for the legislature to change that so that you are only being judged on or evaluated or measured on the students who actually take the test, and that the cohort of students that don't take the test will not adversely affect the number.
Right. So they are starting to offer us two different pieces of data. So we can look at all students who should have tested or did test, either way, just everyone. And if you didn't test, then you didn't meet the standards because you haven't tested. So they can't say that you met the standards. So there's that. And then they also have a piece of data that's only measured on kids who took the test. So we do see that piece of data as well. So we'll start to look at the difference between those as well. But what we're finding when I pull the data on the kids who didn't test, and I look at their FastBridge, because they all take that, it's 50% are low and 50% are high. It's right smack in the middle. It was right at like 49.8%. So it's not like one group is bringing us down and one group is bringing us up so much. But, yeah.
So if I understood you right, I thought that was I thought that wasn't yet a thing where you could do the two pieces of information.
They're starting to provide that in the reports that they give us.
So this is counting the students that did not.
This is everyone right now.
Everyone, but you do not have the data right now.
Right. Yep, it's not consistent enough. They just started giving us that
Okay.
data. So it's not
Then
consistent.
next year, we'll be able to see what that is then.
And we'll look at just the students who tested, but we still want to pay attention
Yeah,
to
you'll
this.
still want to know for the deviation in there. So-
Right.
And I think it's important too that as, administration across the district, teachers across the district, I know being here for 20 years that MCAs and any testing, usually we make pretty fun. And it's not an environment where it's as stressed as I think people are making it out to be. And it might be one of those things that as a parent, we might want to ask a few more questions, like is your child, are they playing you a little bit? Or because being a principal at Pinewood, all the years that I was middle school assistant principal, like we make the days fun. And I do not understand the bad rap. For decades, we've done Iowa Basics tests. We've done things as our own selves, and testing is a part of life. It's a part of everyday academics, and it's a part of everyday job interviewing. And so being able to rise to the occasion and endure a little bit of stress, all it does is show the preparation that is put into all the days before. So I know that people get anxious. Some people get anxious, but one way to overcome that is to work on the front end of what can we do to help somebody overcome it, rather than just giving them that free pass to not take it. That's what I'd like to see in life more, is us working together to help people overcome challenges.
And students talk, right? So I just look at my daughter last year, 6th grade, and 3 times she asked me if she could fail a class because of taking the MCAs. And 3 times I assured her, absolutely not. So there's conflicting information, and so even giving some of those students information on that, because I can't imagine, if I didn't know my student was coming home and then I see on Facebook that we could opt out of it, then why wouldn't I do that if it's creating the stress, or she thinks she's going to fail a class over it? And instead, again, like we made it fun as a family. Like you get to pick your special little sugar-free snacks that you get to suck on while you're taking the test, and then she gets excited about it. But I just think that's even my student who's educated on the fact that it doesn't impact. And they can't, but they talk to each other, so.
All right, moving forward, our fourth World's Best Workforce School area was students ready for career in college. And so our goal was to have a more diversified experience for students who were looking for enrichment opportunities. So we wanted to increase students who are eligible for free and reduced lunch and students of color by 2% each year in some of these enriched courses. And our goal was to increase from 13.9 to 15.9. We increased to 17% with students on free and reduced lunch. That was an awesome gain. Good for them. There's just a tiny bit of 0.2% drop instead of increase with our students of color, but we see this fluctuate back and forth each year. So we just keep watching the data. And the goal for A&I is exactly the same again. We try to align those so we don't have so many goals. I know you can't see that chart, and that's for you to look at on your own, but it does really break down all of the different student population groups and the enrollments in each one, and students with disabilities, American Indian, all the way across the board. Our last World's Best Workforce goal was all students will graduate from high school. Our goal was that we would get to 95% by the end of this school year. We don't get that data until January or February. I don't know why it takes so long, but it just does. So January or February is when we'll get last year's graduation data. But overall, last year we had a 91.5% increase, or up to 91.5 from 91.4. So we're hoping to see that closer to 95%. Our students on free and reduced lunch or students of color, we want to get that up to 90%. And so we made an increase with our free and reduced lunch to 81%, and then just a little bit of a drop again with our students of color. And then the last goal area for achievement integration was to increase the racial diversity of our certified staff to get it closer to our student demographic, increasing at 1% each year. So last year we were at 1.8% diversity, and this year we are at 4.1. So that's an incredible gain, and it's part of the work that we're doing to try to diversify our staff. And this is all staff.
Cindy, I have a question. When you're giving stats on students of color and the decrease, and then you mentioned a couple times that it's not a significant change, is that just because of numbers? Like, is it a student that can impact the number?
It's a really good question. Yes, it is. Because remember, we have only 20% of our population are students of diversity. And so, and if you look even closer, our Hispanic population is about 10%. And then if you look at the other populations, they're even smaller. So that's a small count. And so even a few students can make a bigger difference than when you're looking at our 80% population of white students. A couple of students aren't going to make a big difference. So that is part of why you see that drop in the students of color, because it does affect easily.
Cindy, I have two questions. One is a very quick and simple one. Am I correct that the world's best workforce, this will be the last year we call it that? It has a
Yeah.
new name in the legislature?
I think it'll all fall under the READ Act.
Yeah, that's got this big, long, it's like a sentence.
I can't tell you what it is.
Yeah, but that has changed.
Yes.
So we'll see this data, but it'll be under a different name next.
Yeah.
And then my second question or comment has to do with the free and reduced price lunch process. We know now that the legislature is giving free breakfast and lunches to all students in the state, and that has become, at least colloquially, somewhat of a disincentive for families to fill out that paperwork, even though we do explain to them it's not just for lunches, it's for eligibility for other programs. How is that working out?
activity fees.
So any comments about how that's working out in our district? Because certainly if those numbers go down, that impacts how many extra teachers and special intensive programs we could have because we're artificially showing up lower.
So I think there's been some significant changes in, do you want to speak to any of that as far as what Laura is doing and putting out there?
And I believe Ms. Foshing is inviting Tina Burkholder, our Director of
She
Business
is.
Services, up to the podium to answer this question more.
So with compensatory funding, it's changing for next year, where normally they look at the students that have free or reduced benefits. As of October 1st of this year, it decided for the funding for next year. So for next year, it's not people that do the paper forms. It's based on those that are directly certified. And those preliminary reports won't come out until probably later December, January. They don't, because the state MDE feels that the legislator might change how the formula is working next session. They're cautious to put anything out there because they don't want any inexperienced business managers to rely on that data if it's going to change. But the experienced business managers want that as a starting point to know if we do need to advocate for a different formula. So we're kind of in limbo right now where we don't know what next year's funding will be like. But it's not based on paper forms. It's based on direct certified. But
Can you explain what that is for people that might not understand?
direct certified?
Yes.
So it comes straight from the county of those that are eligible for Medicaid benefits, that we get their status and automatically upload those into our student system. But the paper forms, that helps us with our title funding and our E-rate funding.
Thank you. Any other discussion about the free and reduced priced?
So just for clarity, so we will still be requesting that to be filled out in the future years, correct?
I think we need to do probably a better education campaign for families because I think it is an area of confusion for them. Why am I doing a free and reduced price lunch documentation? The lunches are already free. So I just think we probably need to be better at explaining why it's important to do that. Yeah, it's a poverty marker, indirect marker.
Our title funding on how many people fill out a free and reduced.
Yep. It's been that way for years.
qualify.
It makes no sense.
It seems like there has to be a better way to do that.
Well, it's the government, so I mean, it's,
That it's not likely to change anytime soon because while Minnesota has free lunches, other states do not. And this is a federal program.
We won't solve that tonight. I do want to just make a note of serious praise to that conversation of some topics that maybe just a few years ago weren't as comfortable for you as a school board to talk about. And basically what I hear tonight is you like telling every parent that every cell size and every student matters. That's what that conversation does. I mean, and that's how important every cell size is, even though one or two students can make a difference. You flip it, one or two students can make a difference. You help them, you know. So it's a huge like comfortability conversation that I just saw with all of you. So that's pretty cool. Very proud tonight, like always.
All right, and we'll make this one short because I think I'm way over my time limit. So there is a link here again to the document with our this year's district achievement goals. And again, they directly align to World's Best Workforce. The first one, we're looking for 70% of our students. And this year, we're testing our pre-K students with our Fast Bridge, with our early reading. And we had 89% of our students in the fall show that they are ready to read. And we were only looking for 70, so that's awesome. And then we're at 61% in the fall, so we're well on our way to getting to 70% with our kindergartners too. So that's great. As I said, it's going to say all students can read at grade level, not just third graders. And so again, we're looking for 70% of all of our students to be able to be at grade level with our A reading, and we're looking for 70% with our MCAs as well, with a goal of 80% by 2027. So we're at 64% in the fall, so we're well on our way to 70% there as well. Again, all racial and economic achievement gaps will be closed. So again, this time we're looking for 50%. Because the baseline is at 43.1, so we're looking for 50% by the end of the school year, hoping that we get there, with free and reduced and students of color. And then all students career and college ready, again, looking for educational enrichment opportunities, increasing by 2% each year, up to 19% and 13.5% for free and reduced or students of color. And then lastly, we want to hit that 95% graduation mark by 2025, and we want to hold steady at 95 or more forever. So,
Cindy, I missed part of what you were referring to. I think on the previous slide, you were talking about a 50% number somewhere. and I
yep,
don't see
so,
that.
yeah, because it's written, so it's the first two words in the paragraph, 50%.
Oh, I have to
Yeah,
read?
I know.
Me.
I was taught that you don't start a sentence with a number, so anyway, 50% of students, and so we're at 43.1 right now, so we're hoping by the end of the year we get to 50.
Thank
Any questions, comments, or more information needed, or we can just plan to bring that back on November 4th when we come? Be excited to bring you more data.
We're very excited.
Yeah, thank you. All right.
Really am.
Thank you.
Good. Yeah. Thank you, Cindy.
Cindy.
Awesome.
Moving ahead to item number 8, safe and healthy culture. We're going to welcome Mr. Gary Revening, our activities director, to the podium. Board members, I just want to bring to your attention, there's a small typo on the agenda. The student council trip request, which is item number 8, is an action item, so we do need to vote on it afterwards. That was just just a typo. So, welcome, Gary.
All right, good evening. Thank you for having me. I have 4 agenda items in a row here for you. All these items you have seen previously as a board member. The first one is our Fall Leadership Forum. Craigins Resorts, our student council, so I'm happy to represent them here tonight. This was sent to you last week, but basically they're going to be going up to the Brainerd Lakes area to Craigins. So the forum, the reason they want to go is the third bullet point there is a big one. Gain networking opportunities with other schools, bring meaningful ideas back to our schools, participate in leadership activities to build student leadership capacity and skills. So it's a great opportunity for them to go to a conference and work with students from other schools around Minnesota. Student council advisors will be driving 2 vans with students to Brainerd. It's at Creggan Resort on Gull Lake. Our chaperones are our advisors who do an amazing job, Courtney Roach and Becca Kunkel. And they'll be in charge of the students during their stay. They'll be staying in one cabin. It has 3 floors. The male students will be on the lower level, advisors on the main level, and the female students on the top. There'll be 10 students going to advisors. And again, transportation will be provided by vans, 1 Hoagland van and 1 district van. The itinerary is attached there if you'd like to look at that. And the conference registration, all expenses for this is covered by student council, and there's no cost to our students and no cost to our district to attend. If you're curious, where does student council get some of their money? Well, they sell homecoming t-shirts, they do the homecoming dance, and they have multiple fundraisers throughout the year that the money that they raise goes back to supporting student activities at Monticello High School. So I'm looking for approval tonight for our annual student council trip to Creggan's in Brainerd, Minnesota.
Is there any discussion from the board? I just want to put out a comment about the advisors driving the vans. I just want to reassure any parents or community members that might be watching that when a staff member drives students, do you want to address that they have more than just a driver's license? They have special credentials in order to drive a van with students in it.
Yeah, I can address that. They have annual certification that they have to do, and Bill Miller does that for the Monticello School District. So they have to meet with him to be certified on an annual basis in order to drive students in a van.
Thank you, Gary. Any further discussion from the board? So I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
Moved by Jamie Sieben, seconded by Jeff Hegle to approve the student council trip request as presented. All those in favor, please respond by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed, please say no. And the motion passes 6-0. Congratulations and have fun.
Thank you. The next 2 items go together. They're from the Minnesota State High School League Foundation. So the state of Minnesota gives the sales tax that is generated at state tournaments back to the High School League Foundation, and then they are required to give that money back to all the schools across Minnesota. So each year I apply for both grants, and I need school board approval to receive the funds from the foundation. The first one, is the A, Grant A, Form A, and that is to help offset the cost for free and reduced students that are participating in activities at Monticello High School. This year, I can tell you last school year, we had 99 students that took advantage of our free and reduced program to participate in sports, which is the highest in my career here. So we will get a percentage back. Every school that applies in the state, they figure out how many students have applied, they take the pot of money and divide it out. Last year, it was $60 per athlete at each school. I'm not sure what the number will be this year, but I'm looking for approval for us to receive Grant A funds from the high school league. That's the first one. Excuse me. The second one, each year they have a Form B, and they highlight what you can apply for, and there's certain things. And again, this year it's on safety. Last year we I applied for this grant, and we received an AED that we placed out at the softball complex. This year, again, I'm applying for an AED. I'd like to place that out at the middle school tennis courts because I talked to the middle school. They do not have an AED on this side of the building or on that side of the building. So hoping that we can get that through the grant, no guarantee, but we'll apply and see if we can get it. Also putting in their money for training with NovaCare, our trainer, Courtney Zamora, to have her come out and work with our coaches on first aid training, CPR training, and AED training. So I'm asking the high school league for approximately $2,800, which is the most you can ask for in Form B.
Gary, do you need this whole thing read or just like the last paragraph?
Just the last paragraph, please.
So do you want to do Form A first?
Yes, please.
Therefore, be resolved that the governing body of Monticello School District support the school's application to the Minnesota State High School League Foundation for a Form A grant to offset student activity fees.
Second.
Resolution for Form A read by Member Jeff Hegle, seconded by Mark Branson. All those in favor of approving Form A, please respond by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed, please say no. Motion passes 6-0.
And therefore, be resolved that the governing body of Monticello High School support the school's application to the Minnesota State High School League Foundation for a Form B grant.
Second.
Resolution read by Member Jeff Hegle, seconded by Member Mark Branson. All those in favor of approving the resolution for Form B, please respond by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, please say no. Motion passes 6-0. Thank you.
And if I could, before you move on, Gary, I just have one comment to make a connection here. It'll make a connection to a previous conversation. I think it's important for the board. But speaking of family engagement, I've seen the activities department work with Cindy Voshing, Director of Teaching and Learning, on 2 family engagement nights that have happened already during the first 6 weeks of school. And at those family engagement nights, there are resources there, including people from several departments. We've highlighted the activities department, community ed department, and tech department. And as always, at every family engagement, we also highlight the food service to make sure that there are support people there to help fill out and complete forms. And so, like, making that Form A accessible for families who need participation fees covered or waived. Everything is so connected, that free and reduced form, but it's also connected to the work that we do to make sure that we make things available and accessible and communicated, and we'll keep working on it. It's something that we need to keep improving, but we are making those strides to pull departments together and offer support at family nights.
We never want to have a student athlete not be able to participate because of finances. We find a way to make that happen so that they can be out for their sport. Thank you. And finally, D, Monticello High School 24-25 Coaches Advisors Handbook. It's an action item. I present that to the school board annually. There are no changes from last year. That was sent to you as well if you'd like to look at it. The only updates were making a few name changes in there from last year to this year. I have a new activities secretary, so we just updated the handbook and are looking for our annual approval at this time.
Is there any questions or discussion from the board on the Coaches and Advisors Handbook? I want to just say that I think it's really well done. I appreciated all the section on academic eligibility and all of the ways that you have outlined that you go through that. So I think that's always a perennial issue for us. So I'll entertain a motion.
Second.
Moved by Jeff Hegle,
Second.
seconded by Casey Root to approve the 2024-25 Coaches and Advisors Handbook as presented. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, please say no. And the handbook passes 6-0. Thank you, Gary.
Thank you.
We now welcome to the podium Mr. Rob Daniker, Director of Human Resources. He's going to go over the Education Support Services Master Agreement and second reading of policies. Welcome, Mr. Daniker.
Chair Ziebarth, members of the board, thank you for having me tonight for 2 agenda items. The first, as you mentioned, is a summary of our tentative agreement that we have with our education support specialist, Local 284. This was a tentative agreement reached in mediation on Thursday, September 12th, 2024, and was ratified by the ESS group on Tuesday, October 8th. And the district administration recommends that the Board of Education approve this agreement tonight. The essential changes to the agreement include the following, so I've broken them out by year 1, year 2 in terms of financial, and then also separately the language pieces after we talk about financial. So year 1, thank you, Gavin. Year 1, which has already concluded, July 1, 23 to June 30th, 2024. Salary schedule increase is 4% on most cells with 7% increase on the child care cells. And so those are the lowest paid members of this group. And also, interestingly, part of the tentative agreement was no retroactive pay for July 1, 23 through August 31st, 23. And that was as we moved the dollars and cents around in negotiations to get to a mutually agreeable final number. That was a proposal from the ESS group. Health insurance, 0% increase in district contribution to both family and single coverage in year one. And then on longevity, we moved step 2 of longevity from 20 years to 15 years and moved step 3 of longevity from 30 years to 20 years. And also increased 5 cents per hour at each increment. Regarding step 3, the reality was very few of our members got to 30 years of experience within our district as an ESS member. So that was very hard to attain and not frequently attained either. In year 2, July 1, 24 through June 30th, 25, so the fiscal year that we're now, again, 4% increase on most cells. In this case, we saw an 8% increase on step 1 cells. So we tried to create an incentive for people to join the district and join this unit. And then a 2% increase on childcare cells. So they saw a big jump in year 1, smaller jump in year 2. In terms of health insurance, 16% increase in district contribution of family coverage in year 2. And then we separated out family from single, so a $975 per month increase $975 per month in district contribution to single coverage. On longevity for year 2, we added a 5-year increment and then increased each of the cells at 5 cents per hour therein. And then finally, in terms of financials in year 2, the retiree health benefit, so we closed enrollment in the current retiree health benefit effective June 30th, 24, and we established a new retiree health, HRA health benefit effective July 1, 24. And as the board's aware, that's something that we were able to successfully do within all of our recent non-certified groups, is move away from, excuse me, that grandfathered, so to speak, retirement health benefit. In terms of language items, we did add one holiday for year-round ESS employees. The majority of our ESS employees are not year-round, but for instance, Magic Adventures and those working during the summer, they now have Juneteenth as a holiday. Hours of service, we added a line that states that pursuant to state statute, if e-learning day pay is required for this group, that we would do that. But it basically does not commit to anything in writing. It refers back to the law itself. We amended the use of sick leave on school closure days from 2 days to 1 day. And so what that is that there was a trigger mechanism within the contract that if an ESS member wanted to use leave time on a school closure day, they could trade 2 sick days in to do that. We reduced that to 1. And actually in state law right now, it's not necessary in general, but so we just amended that language. Job posting, excuse me. We clarified that new and vacant positions will be posted on the district website and via district email, so just updated that language to 21st century language, removed a lot of the mail, postmark, things like that. We deleted summer position job posting language. This was mutually agreeable language. For the district, it eliminated a separate process for hiring in the summer that was different from hiring the rest of the year. For the unit, it eliminated a possible hurdle for potential unemployment claims, which became legal, or I shouldn't say legal, but became available to them 2 summers ago. And then finally, we added language allowing a second voluntary transfer during one school year when a newly created job is posted within the unit. Within the contract language, a voluntary move is allowed once per school year for this unit. We had a situation last school year where a brand new position was created, and one of the leading candidates for that position had already made a voluntary move, and the union raised concern about that and addressed it at the table. So we agreed on language that would allow that to happen if it's a brand new position. Language cleanup, we adjusted years from 21 to 23 to 23 through 25 throughout, of course. We also cleaned up any gender references throughout the contract as well. In terms of probation, dismissal, and layoffs, there was a line within the dismissal language which contradicted board policy, so we eliminated that. And then we also updated language regarding dues deduction to align with statutory updates that took place over the last 2 years at the legislature. Retroactive pay, similar to our food service and custodial maintenance agreements, we clarified that retroactive pay following settlement of the master agreement is dispersed only to current employees and those who retired in good standing prior to a successor agreement being ratified. So a person who resigned to pursue other employment elsewhere would no longer, and others would no longer have access to retro pay. And then finally, sick leave. We increased the annual sick leave allocation from 9 days to 10 days for this unit. The total package value over 2 years was 10.01, and that was generally in line with what our board parameters set out to do.
Is there any questions or discussion from the board for Mr. Danaker?
Yeah, just a comment, Mr. Danaker, I want to say thank you for all your hard work across all the employee groups. I got to work with you somewhat on a few of them, and I enjoyed it very much and was very impressed with how you handled things.
Thank you.
Especially on the comments around the retiree benefit changes that we made. That was an important goal that we had in mind, and I applaud you for helping to make sure that got done. Thank you.
Appreciate that.
Any other comments or questions from the board? Finding none, this is an action item, and I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Motion to approve the Educational Support Services Master Agreement as presented. Please respond by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say no. And the master agreement passes 6-0. Thank you, Mr. Danaker, and congratulations.
Thank you.
Now we're going to move on to second reading of policies. We have quite a list of them, I think 13 of them. Board members, you did see these 2 weeks ago in our meeting and had the opportunity to ask additional questions or delve into them any further. So I'll turn it over to Mr. Danaker at this point.
Yep. Thank you, Chair Ziebarth. You mentioned we have 13 policy updates for action tonight. And again, just to preface that the policy committee does do deep dives every month on these policies. And so these are thoroughly reviewed by the 3 board members along with the rest of the policy committee. And so we bring these to you tonight, having reviewed them in depth and doing our due diligence before bringing them forward. Several of these policies coming forward tonight are due to amended state statute language or MSBA updates, but usually the MSBA updates are caused by update to state statute. So the first one, 506, student discipline, is just one of those. This was one that we actually started as a policy committee reviewing last school year and then paused because there were some things at the legislature, specifically around the school resource officers, that were not settled. And so we came back to it this fall. The purpose of this policy is to ensure that students are aware of and comply with the school district's expectations for student conduct. Such compliance will enhance the school district's ability to maintain discipline and ensure that there is no interference with the educational process. The school district will take appropriate action, disciplinary action, when students fail to adhere to the code of student conduct established by this policy. Within this policy, there is one specific section that we locally had to make some decisions on and provides detailed language. And that is on starts on page 9, continues on to page 10 and 11 under removal of students from class. And so that was part of the legislative update that took place, which again caused us to review this policy. Any questions regarding 506? Okay. Moving on, the next policy update, this is again due to statute update. This is number 102, equal education opportunity. The purpose of this policy is to ensure that equal educational opportunity is provided for all students of the school district. I don't have any other details to share on this one, so any questions we might have? No, moving on. Next one is 104. This is again up for review due to legislative update. School district mission statement. The purpose of this policy is to establish a clear statement of the purpose for which the school district exists. Fairly perfunctory in nature, nothing monumental there, but any questions anybody has? Moving on. The next one is 204, again, brought forward by MSBA update along with statutory update. This is school board meeting minutes. The purpose of this policy is to establish procedures relating to the maintenance of records of the school board, and the publication of its official proceedings. Any questions regarding 204? Seeing none. Moving on. 205, this one we forward as part of our triannual review. So this is just up for a 3-year review locally. No legislative changes informed this one. This is open meetings and closed meetings. The school board embraces accountability and transparency in the conduct of its business in the belief that openness produces better programs, more efficient administration of programs, and an organization more responsive to public interest and less susceptible to private interest. The school board shall conduct its business under a presumption of openness. At the same time, the school board recognizes and respects the privacy rights of individuals as provided by law. The school board also recognizes that there are certain exceptions to the Minnesota open meeting law as recognized in statute where it has been determined that in limited circumstances, the public interest is best served by the closing of a school board meeting. And so that is the general nature of policy 205. Any questions on that one? No? Moving on. The next one is 207. Now, this is a new policy for us. We do not currently have a policy 207. MSBA recommends that we do adopt a 207, so that is the purpose of bringing this forward tonight. This is titled Public Hearings, and the purpose of this policy, the school board recognized the importance of obtaining public input on matters properly before the school board during a public hearing. The purpose of this policy is to establish procedures to efficiently receive public input. Specifically, the law requires that public hearings are required by law concerning certain issues, including but not limited to school closings, educational district establishment, and agreements for secondary education. And so more frequently than not in our district, those agreements for secondary education would be the ones that would come before the board. So that is policy 207. Any questions on that one? Okay, hearing none. Moving to 208, this is the development, adoption, and implementation of policies. Again, this is just our 3-year review cycle policy for us. The purpose of this policy is to emphasize the importance of the policymaking role of the school board and provide the means for it to be an ongoing effort. Of note, within this policy, and I think I had missed the last policy committee meeting because of illness, but I'll catch up at the next policy committee meeting, but in policy 208, it does allow for single meeting adoption of policies that are simple reviews on a regular basis without any significant changes to them, and that might be something I think that we look at enacting moving forward when we have some of these reviews. So that's policy 208. Any questions on that one?
Yeah, when you say the single, or I don't remember exactly how you said it, but does that mean that would be a first read adoption at a board meeting?
It would mean that we don't do the first read, second read procedure. We would just do a single read and then adopt it at one meeting if we chose to. We don't have to.
At the board meeting or at a policy meeting?
At a board meeting, yeah. We can't do business at a policy committee meeting, yeah.
Thank you.
We chose, Mark, to keep it the way we do it.
Yeah, we chose to keep it the way the law does allow us to do that, and it would be a very perfunctory change, like a renumbering of something, or one word change, or a typo, or something like that. But just for consistency's sake, we decided at the policy meeting that we'll just press on and do everything with the 2 reads the way we do now, to give ample opportunity to the board members who are not on the policy committee the chance to weigh in and see what's going on. But the law does allow us to do that. So if we had a rare circumstance where we had a time crunch or something, we could do it without 2 meetings.
Good question. Thank you for the answer. Any other questions on this one? Okay. Moving on to 209. This is just another triannual review policy. So this is Code of Ethics. The purpose of this policy is to assist the individual school board member in understanding his or her role as part of the school board and in recognizing the contribution that each member must make to develop an effective and responsible school board. Any questions on 209? Okay. A couple left. Hang with me here. The next one is 210, conflict of interest, school board members, another 3-year review cycle policy. The purpose of this policy is to observe state statutes regarding conflicts of interest and to engage in school district business activities in a fashion designed to avoid any conflict of interest or the appearance of impropriety. So again, guidelines for board members. Any questions on 210? Seeing none, moving to 211. This one is, again, part of our review cycle. Criminal or civil action against school districts, school board members, employee, or students. The purpose of this policy is to provide guidance about the school district's position, rights, and responsibilities when a civil or criminal action is pending against a school district or a school board member, school district employee, or student. And I should just note that, of course, this provides kind of a template or guidance. At the same time, the district does employ legal counsel as well, and this would, any of these circumstances would be one in which we would also pick up the phone and call our legal support to get additional information. So that's 211. Any questions on that one? All right. We're getting close. 212. Again, this one comes forward as part of our review cycle. School board member development. In recognition of the need for continuing in-service training and development for its members, the purpose of this policy is to encourage the members of the school board to participate in professional development activities designed for them so that they may perform their responsibilities. And I will just note the Minnesota School Board Association does a wonderful job of creating opportunities and through development and leadership skills training for board members all across the state. And I know that our board has been heavily engaged in those activities as well. Any questions on 212?
I'll just make a comment about 212. We, in policy committee, we did have a discussion about the time frame where there are two sets of trainings that a new board member coming onto the board would need to complete according to state statutes. And in order to make sure that we are in compliance, we have set some time periods for new board members to complete that training so that it doesn't get pushed off and pushed off and pushed off. And so we decided to be proactive in our district and have a local policy among the board to make sure that new members are achieving the basic level of training that's recommended by the statute.
All right. We have two left. The next one is 214. This one, again, is a product of our review cycle. Also, part of the purpose for reviewing this one is to amend the number itself. So currently, this is number 215, but MSBA has it in their policy handbook as 214, so that's what we're proposing as well, the renumbering. We also, locally, we do have a current 214, and we'll be, in the future at our next meeting, reviewing that for possible amendment to 215 to swapping places on those. And it is important that we have alignment with our MSBA policy handbook simply for instance, one example would be when we do consult with our legal counsel, it really helps facilitate ease of conversation and review that way as well. So 214 is out-of-state travel by school board members. The purpose of this policy is to control out-of-state travel by school board members as required by law. And so just control there just simply means to effectively police that practice to make sure it is above board and for salient purposes. Any questions on 214? All right, we've arrived at our last one. This is policy 413, harassment and violence. This was part of a statutory update. It is a very significant policy within our scope of policies as a school district. And so harassment and violence is something that for compliance purposes, we have to frequently across different compliance vehicles acknowledge that we have reviewed this frequently, in many cases annually. And so harassment and violence, the purpose of this policy is to maintain a learning and working environment free from harassment and violence on the basis of race, color, creed, religion, national origin, sex, age, marital status, familial status, status with regard to public assistance, sexual orientation, or disability as a protected class. Any questions on 413 harassment and violence at all?
Finding none. Board members, we can approve these 13 policies as a group. And so I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
Moved by Jamie Sieben, seconded by Jeff Hegle. All those in favor of approving policies 506, 102, 104, 204, 205, 207, 208, 209, 210, 211, 212, 214, and 413, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, please say no. And the policies pass 6-0. Thank you, Mr. Danaker.
The Policy Committee will be very excited to get you back next meeting. Your replacement, I don't know, definitely not as good.
We're glad to see you in hale and hearty health, Mr. Danaker. Finding that we have completed our agenda, I will allow the opportunity for any comments, questions before we adjourn from the board. Finding none, we are adjourned at 7:50. Thank you very much.
And there is a